My parents kicked me out after my golden child sister framed me for betrayal, and 10 years later they begged for help after she turned her back on them. 10 years ago, my family threw me out of the house because they assumed that I had apparently betrayed them to be able to pay off my college tuition. I was just 18, about to go off to college, when my parents told me that they did not want me living in their house anymore, and it was all thanks to my older sister, Janine. Janine is 4 years older than me and had always been the golden child of the family. There was no doubt about that. It has been very clear to me right from my childhood that whatever I did, Janine could always do it better, so I did not even bother to compete. She went to business school, and everybody was really proud of her. But when I got accepted into a really reputable college in the UK so I could study history, it did not sit well with her. My parents had made it very clear to me that they would not be able to afford the tuition, so I had to figure something out for myself. I even asked them to help me take out a student loan and become a CO signer, but they told me that they did not want to take that risk, and that was pretty disappointing. We ended up fighting a lot over that. They had paid for my sister to go to college, but they claimed that sending me to college was going to be very expensive, and they had to think about their future first, since they were planning on starting a business around the same time. So they did not want to take on more risks than they could afford to. I was at a loss about what to do, because I felt like they were trying to make things extra difficult for me, just so I would end up passing up on such an opportunity. They had already told me that they would not be able to help me out with the tuition, and I knew that there was no way they would be helping me out with the other expenses either, like traveling and my cost of just living there. I knew that once I got there, I could work my way through college, but I would at least need some help with the tuition. With no other option left, I decided to approach my aunt. My aunt is my dad's older sister, and she is a much better person than either of my parents, to be honest. We have always had a good relationship, but I know that my father did not like her much, and neither did my mom. So I tried to keep a distance from her, and we would only see each other at family get-togethers and stuff. Then I would have to speak to her whenever I knew that my father was not lurking around because he really did not like her. He thought that she was a bit of a show-off, and every time that he would meet her, she apparently made him feel small. However, in her defense, I really do not think that it was her fault. For context, she was 7 years older than my father and is a neurosurgeon. My father is not unsuccessful, but in comparison, everybody would say that she was the more successful of the two. Both my parents were dentists, and they were doing well for themselves. But my dad always had a habit of comparing himself to his sister. No matter how hard she tried to be his friend, he just kept being jealous of her, and he was so insecure that he could not even understand the thought of being a friend to her. She had told me these things after I had approached her once I got kicked out of my own house so I could live with her until it was time for me to go away to college. We really bonded once I got kicked out since she became my only friend and confidant after that point, as we were living together, and I would really like to thank Janine for making sure that it happened. After I had asked my aunt to help me out, she had gladly agreed, and I'd even begged her to keep this entire thing a secret because I did not want my dad to find out about any of this. He would absolutely lose his mind if he got to know that I asked for money from his sister. Janine, however, found out about it somehow. And one day when I came back home after hanging out with my friends, I realized that all my stuff had been put into boxes and everything was packed up and ready to go. My parents were sitting in the living room, ready to confront me with a bunch of papers in their hands, and Janine standing by their side with the most smug look on her face. I still cannot forget the sight, because even though it has been a whole decade since that day, I will never be able to forget or forgive the kind of humiliation I had to face that day. My father had told me that Janine had handed them proof of me betraying the family in order to be able to pay off my college tuition, and I have no idea what that meant. I knew that they had figured out that I had asked my aunt to help me pay off my college tuition, but I would not go as far as to say that I had betrayed the family. I tried to explain to them that I did not have any other option left, which is why I had approached her. But then he threw the papers that he was holding in my face, and when I went through them, I realized that they were completely fabricated, screenshots of emails that had apparently been exchanged between me and my aunt. Janine had somehow come up with heavily edited emails between me and my aunt, where I had apparently handed over the business model and other details of my parents' company, along with a list of potential investors in exchange for her to pay off my tuition. I do not know how Janine was even able to come up with something like that. I will have to hand it to her that it was a pretty genius move, and I cannot even imagine the amount of hours it would have taken for her to sit and conceive of such a devious plan and then actually go through with it, because the emails looked really authentic and anybody would have been convinced that they were real. However, when I went through those papers, I immediately told my parents that they were not real, and told them that Janine was trying to fool them just to get me kicked out. And I even offered to open up my laptop and show them the truth. But they said that they believed my sister and they had implicit trust in her and they wanted me out of the house that very moment. I tried to beg them to let me stay because even though I hated them from the bottom of my heart at that moment, I did not want to be a burden on my aunt since she was already paying for me to go to college. I did not want to end up living with her as well, but my parents did not budge and said that they wanted me out because I had betrayed them and they could not stand me anymore. So eventually I had to leave. And I ended up going to my aunt's place where she treated me with the utmost kindness and respect, something that I never received from my parents, and since then she has been my only family. My parents never reached out to me after that, and the only person who texted me after that incident was Janine. But that was only to tell me that she was really happy that I was gone. She was very vague when she texted me, so I would not be able to use that against her. All she said was that I should not leave my laptop just lying around, and that she had known that something was fishy the second I stopped fighting with my parents about the money for my college tuition. I had told a couple of my friends about it, and I do have a habit of leaving my laptop open, but that is usually just in my room. So I guess maybe she had been snooping around in my room to find something against me when she realized that I had stopped fighting with our parents. So it must mean that I was able to get a hold of the money that I would need, and that is how she had come across the information. She had probably taken screenshots of other emails, and then edited and arranged the whole thing with the help of Photoshop. In case anybody was still wondering how she managed to pull it off, it took me a long time to figure those things out for myself. So I hope this satisfies the curiosity of anybody who was wondering. It is not relevant, but I just thought I should mention it anyway. After that, I had no contact with my family, and my aunt was the one who supported me throughout by sending me to college. Then, after I came back once I graduated, she let me live with her until I found a job and was able to move out. I had expected that maybe I would be able to see my family at events or on holidays, but they cut off the rest of our family as well. My aunt told me it was because now that they had established a business of their own, they were too proud and believed that they were above us since it was doing relatively well. My parents were dentists. My mother actually loved being in the kitchen, as did my father. So they had started a dessert shop for dental-safe treats, and it was a pretty unique concept, so they were doing pretty well. However, once they started getting successful, they cut ties with the rest of the family, and that is why nobody had heard from them for the past 10 years. But then the pandemic happened a couple of years ago, and a lot of businesses like theirs took a serious hit, and I am assuming so did they, which is probably why my parents decided to get back in touch with me a couple of days ago. I do not know where they got my number from, and it was totally, completely out of the blue, but I was at work when they called me. My mother asked me if I had a moment to speak to them. I had half a mind to just hang up without even a response, but I tried to deal with that calmly, and I told her that I would talk to her once I got back home, so I would buy myself some time to think about whether I wanted to speak to her or not, since it had been 10 years since I had last spoken to my parents. But I was also kind of curious about why they were calling me after so long. So once I got back home from work, I decided to call them back. When I did, they tried to make small talk with me initially, but I told them to cut it out because it was just making me more annoyed. I told them to stop beating around the bush, and so my mother finally told me that the real reason she was calling me was to apologize and to make things right with me. She wanted me to come over and meet her and my father because they had realized what a huge mistake they had made 10 years ago by kicking me out of the house in favor of my sister. Since then, that decision has really backfired. She hinted at certain things on our phone call, and I tried to get her to talk about them, but she told me that she wanted me to visit her the next day, and then we could sit and talk about things in detail. I tried very hard to get her to tell me on the phone, but she insisted that I could visit her and my father just once. So I went over to the place the very next day in the evening after work. I was really surprised that the address that they had given me was not of the house that I had grown up in, but of an apartment in a really bad neighborhood. I had no idea why they had to shift from our old house to such an apartment, but once I sat down with them and I spoke to them, I realized that it was because I had assumed correctly that business had suffered a lot during the pandemic, and unfortunately, it forced them to sell their house and a lot of their assets to be able to keep up because they were not making any money. My parents seemed happy to see me, but mostly they just wanted to talk about how bad it had been for them. They told me that even during the pandemic, my sister, with a business degree, had the bright idea of selling whatever they had to keep up with the bills, and instead of shuttering the business for a while and starting afresh later on, she thought that it would be a better idea to invest even more money to get things going. That had been a mistake because it did not really quite take off the way that they had expected. Even after the pandemic had died down, the business is still struggling, but Janine has faith that it is going to work better. However, my parents really regret putting all their money into that, since now they are the ones facing the losses. They told me that apparently Janine takes whatever little money they make from the business and keeps it mostly to herself. She gives them just enough money to survive since she had taken over the business a couple of years ago and had them sign all the paperwork and stuff. They had done it because they had assumed that she would be capable and competent and had never even imagined that she would ever treat them like this. But they were struggling to get by, and most of whatever money was made from the business, it all went into her pockets, and they had to beg and plead with her for money every single time. They had no other option since they had already given her everything that they had in the past, and now they were totally screwed. So of course, they were asking me for help now, and that is the real reason that they had reconnected with me after 10 years. To ask if I would be willing to help out in this situation, since they are not getting any younger. But I immediately told them that I had bad news for them, because there was no way I was helping them out or supporting them in any way whatsoever. It is not that I could not afford to, just that I did not think they deserved it. They had never looked out for me, so now that they were in trouble, it was quite unreasonable for them to expect me to help. I told them all of this straight to their faces because I low-key saw this coming when I walked into the house itself, since there literally could not be any other reason for them calling me over anyway. After I told them that I would not be able to help them out or support them, I decided to get up and leave. My parents tried to stop me and tell me that I should not act this way and that they were counting on me since my sister had turned her back on them. I just did not even bother to explain myself. And I told them that it was really sad that my sister had done that to them. But I was doing the same since I did not owe anybody anything. Then I walked out as soon as I could, but they had been bothering me ever since, trying to call me from various numbers and texting me, telling me that I need to help them out because they are in serious financial trouble now. I feel weird. Am I the asshole for refusing to support my parents after my sister turned her back on them? Update 1. Hi, thank you so much for your comments. I am sticking to my decision of not helping my parents because they do not deserve it. As I said earlier, I discussed this with my aunt as well, and she said if my father had really needed help so badly, then he could have come to her after I rejected them. But he chose not to do that anyway. Now it was not our problem what they were going through. It has been 10 years since they kicked me out, and they could not even manage to come up with an honest and sincere apology to me. They even reached out to me just because they wanted me to support them. It makes me so angry every time I think about it, and I feel like I should not have responded to them in the first place. But anyway, at least I did my part, and I went to visit them. And even then they could not come up with an apology appropriate enough to at least try and mend our relationship. It was also pretty stupid of them to invest more and more money into their business and their daughter, knowing that there was a pandemic happening and they had no idea if they would be able to survive it or not. I do not think anybody needs to take the fall for their own idiotic decisions. So they can keep texting me and trying to get through to me. I am not going to let it bother me. Update 2. Hey, so 2 weeks ago I visited my parents, and after that I pretty much did not have any contact with them. They did keep trying to talk to me, but I did not respond to them. After a week, they even stopped trying, so I thought that they were done. My aunt expected my father to reach out to her instead, but even that did not happen, and we were quite relieved. But yesterday night, Janine showed up at my house. I do not know how she was able to find where I live, but I was not expecting her, and the cherry on top was that my aunt had actually come over for dinner last night, so she got to speak to both of us at the same time. But when I saw her standing outside through the peephole, I decided that I was not going to let her in, and I even told her that we were not willing to speak to her, so she needed to go away. However, she was pretty argumentative and said that what she needed to discuss with us was urgent, and it is not like she had any interest in being around us in the first place, but this was important, which is why she was here. She told me that she would wait outside all night if needed, and she knew that my aunt was inside since she had seen the car parked outside, so she knew that at some point my aunt would have to come out, and then she would say whatever it is that she had to say. Eventually, I had to let her in because I did not want any drama outside my house, and that would definitely be something to talk about for the neighbors anyway. Once she was inside, she sat down and started telling us that she knew about the conversation that I had had with my parents 2 weeks ago and said that it was not right to reject them, and that they were very disappointed with the way that I had behaved. From that point onwards, I was pretty irritated because she had no right to comment on how I should be behaving, because she was someone who got me kicked out all those years ago and is actually the main reason that I do not have a good relationship with my parents. Also the fact that they are not good parents in the first place. But then she literally went on to tell me that now that I had disappointed my parents yet again, she was giving me a chance to redeem myself. She also told my aunt that she had also not been a good sister to my father for many years, so this was our chance to do better. She said that she now wanted us to invest in the business so that she could still continue it and they would not be losing out on more money in the process. She said that this could be our payback because she believed that apparently my parents had done a lot for me and even reminded my aunt of certain incidents where my father had been there for her from their childhood. It was obviously some script that she had prepared with our parents, and she was now trying it out on us to see if it worked or not. Unfortunately for her and my parents, we are not that emotional, and we are definitely not fools like she had taken us to be. I got really pissed off, and I told her to get out because she had made it seem like there was something really urgent that she was trying to tell us, and this was her idea of urgent. I did not care for it. When I told her to get out, we got into an argument, and she said that I was being really cruel because our parents were having a lot of health problems as well, and it seemed like I did not even care for that. I told her that even if I did, I would not be willing to do anything until they apologized to me from the bottom of their hearts, which seemed unlikely because they really did not even think that they had anything to be sorry for. My aunt said that the way things were going right now was just despicable and that she needed to leave. After that, things got really ugly. We had a nasty verbal spat. Janine said a lot of things to me that were below the belt, and I ended up doing the same to her because things were finally coming to a head after so long, and all the resentment that I had been holding in myself for the past 10 years just came bubbling up to the surface and out of my mouth. We came really close to fighting physically, but then my aunt intervened and told Janine to get out of the house because she was the one who was provoking me, and she did not want a physical altercation because that would not end well for either of us. So then she eventually left after a lot of cursing and fighting, and it has been one full day since then, but I am still not over it. My aunt stayed the night because she could see that I was in a really bad state and had a complete breakdown after Janine left and started crying because of how terrible she had made me feel. I felt like I had gone back to how I used to feel in my childhood when they were all up against me, and it was just really traumatizing for me. Anyway, I am feeling better now, but I am still pretty pissed and hurt. Update 3. Hi, so it has been 3 days since my last update. This morning my aunt told me that she had received a call from her brother and said that she was planning to visit him in the evening, so I told her that I would come along so they would not be able to ambush her and try to manipulate her like they had tried to do to me, because my aunt is a lot softer and I felt like she would be easier to break. So I told her that I would come along, and a couple of hours ago I visited my parents again, but this time with my aunt with me. Once we got there, my parents seemed surprised to see me, but pretended like it was fine and started telling my aunt all the same things that they had told me. But I interrupted them in the middle and told them that she already knew all of this because she was the only person who had been on good terms with me after they kicked me out. So I had told her everything because she was my family. I disrupted their flow, and after that, they did not know how to play the victim anymore since I had called them out, so they just straight up asked my aunt if she would be willing to help them out with money. My aunt tried to be diplomatic and said that she was going to think about it, but she needed some time and said that they were not allowed to bother her the way that they had tried to do to me in the meantime. That is when my parents got really defensive and said they were not trying to bother me. They were just trying to look out for themselves because they were in desperate need and desperate times called for desperate measures. So I chose to take up the opportunity and confront them about what they had done to me and ask them why I had been desperate for financial support or some sense of stability back when I wanted to go to college, but they had never offered to help me out. And now all of a sudden they expected people from their family to help them out? That just seemed really unrealistic and kind of unreasonable to me. I told them that I had not asked them to give me an explanation the first time that I had visited them because they did not have anything satisfactory to say, and I honestly did not care either. But now, since they insisted on asking for help, I wanted them to explain things to me since none of this made any sense anyway. Once the first asked them to explain themselves and their actions from the past, they started coming up with a bunch of lame excuses about why they had done what they did. I do not know how it was so difficult for them to just come out and say that they did not like me in the past, and they had always preferred my sister over me. It was literally that easy. All they had to do was admit it, and I would know that they were being honest and sincere now at least. But they kept trying to come up with various reasons as to why they had behaved with me the way that they did, mostly trying to pin the blame on me by pretending like I was not really connected with them, and I behaved very differently from my sister, who tried and really put an effort to get along with my parents. They were speaking as if we were all in a relationship, and I was not putting in an effort, like I was not literally their child and they were the ones supposed to be making an effort to make me feel comfortable and safe, which they never did. It was amusing, to be honest, to watch them grasp at straws, because I knew that they did not have any real reason, and they did not want to be honest because they wanted to play it safe and be clever. But I could see right through them, and I just let them go on and fumble their way through that conversation while I said nothing. I just watched them struggle with my aunt. Towards the end, since they realized that they had nothing to say to be able to justify or defend themselves, they actually ended up saying that they had not counted on me being the most successful sibling, which is why they had treated me like that. And that just made it so hard for me not to laugh out loud because, even though it was incredibly insulting, it was really funny because they were just ensuring that we did not help them at all. Once they were done, my aunt and I told them that we would think about supporting them and we would let them know in a couple of days. Then we left, and they really requested us to consider it at the very least because that would be a lot of help to them and also Janine. It took all my strength not to roll my eyes at them, but anyway, after we left, my aunt and I had a small discussion, and we concluded that we would have to tell them about it because that would just lead to more drama, and we did not want that to happen.